is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All right, we're back. Time to talk a little Okie. Let's talk about the best team in town. Let's talk about the team that is 10-0-1, baby. And that's the Florida Panthers. Time to hunt is the hashtag. Make sure you post that all over the place. David Dwork, of course. You can follow him on Twitter at David Dwork. Catch the podcast, of course, Chirping the Cats podcast. Follow it. Make sure you listen as always. How you doing, my brother? You doing all right?
I'm doing great. Orlando. How are you on this Victory Monday?
Oh, man. I was talking about this. It's you watch the Dolphins and the Canes and they win, but, you see it and whatever, they won. They beat bad teams. They played bad and they still won. Then you watch the Panthers and the Heat and it's like, okay, now you see what real franchises look like, real winning, all that kind of stuff. And now is the time that David, I think we're going to, this is the year where I think we kind of get that buzz back again for the Panthers, that we get the average fan on board now. And the performance on Saturday without Barkov to beat the Panthers and for that, to have the golden child also between the pipes. That was a lot of fun, man. That was a lot of fun.
No Barkov, no Bennett, no Bobrovsky, no Joe Thornton. No Achari. Remember, he went out very early in the season. I mean, the depth that we talked about as we headed into the season with your training camp has been tested almost immediately, and they're passing every test with flying colors. I mean, to go out and do what they did against Carolina on Saturday, who arguably, the best team in the league, right? Arguably with Florida and a couple others, but to put a 4 spot on them in the first period when both teams were extremely hyped up for that game. I mean, there's something brewing in Sunrise. And to your point, I think last year, the success they had, the playoff series, and the fact that the whole summer, the whole offseason, they were talking about that playoff series, a first-round playoff series. That's what everybody's talking about. That's how good this Panthers team is. The buzz is there. And, once you get the national buzz, once you get the success on the ice, that's when people in this region start paying attention. Like, oh, you mean others are talking about the Panthers? It's cool to talk about the Panthers? All right, I'm in.
Yeah, it's effed up that the national people are already on board way ahead of our local people. Okay, because the Panthers, it's kind of an odd fan base because there's this local core that's super hardcore, but it's a small hardcore fan base that's there, and then you've got to wait for the average fan to kind of figure it out. But in South Florida, since we're not a hockey town, usually that's the last part that actually gets on board. It's nationally that they notice it before our average local fans actually realize, holy shit, we got a great team. Let's go watch it. It's super entertaining,
Yeah. No, well, I mean, look, that's no surprise, right? It's just like you said, the difference is the base. The Panthers have an extremely passionate fan base. It's just not nearly as big as the Dolphins or the Heat or the Canes, because it's been established for decades. There's been winning there. There's stuff for people to hang their hat on. I mean, not so much with the Dolphins in my 38-year-old lifetime.
The Dolphins are living off the past still. They're living off older people. If they continue this, those old people like myself die off, and then it'll get ugly because you have ruined your generation of the last 20 years. You do this for another 20 years, oh my God. You don't even want to see how that stadium's going to be. Seriously.
Dude, if they do this for another 20 years, that would be like, if my math is correct, 70 years, 60 years between Super Bowl wins. I mean, that's
Detroit Lions.
That's ridiculous.
Detroit Lions.
Yeah,
they were in the process. They won back in the 50s, dude. 70 years. 70 years. And the Browns, it's the 60s with Jim Brown. So they're looking at 60 years of having a championship the last time around. So, yeah. It's rough, dude. So, yeah. And by the way, what I liked about Saturday, which was, again, for those of us that follow it every day, Knight sucked the other night. And it was really important to find out how he was going to bounce back. And we're not talking about playing a shitty team. He was playing a badass team. And the kid, stood up on his head, played well on Saturday night. And I thought that was, to me, that was the most important factor for me of that game. Yeah, beating Carolina is sweet because they're a pain in the ass, and stinking Trocheck still scored and got an assist and all that. but I was really happy for the young kid to watch him bounce back from the other night.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Spencer Knight is like he can go out there the way he did on Thursday against the Capitals, go in cold off the bench, face breakaways, bad bounces, give up 4 goals in 2 periods, and doesn't phase him at all. Just goes on with his life. 20 years old, not a care in the world. He's so wired to be a goaltender. It's kind of ridiculous. And then, no surprise that he bounces back the way he did against Carolina because look. He played some of his best hockey last season against the eventual Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning. So It's not like he's intimidated by these teams or that he can't rise to the challenge. I think for Knight, just letting him get that consistency would be key to him doing it on a game-by-game basis. But again, he's been so consistent in practices, in games. Every time you see him, he looks almost exactly the same. So it's pretty crazy. Like you talk about somebody who's made to do something specific. This guy was constructed to be a hockey goaltender.
Yeah, no, I was impressed with the kid because that Saturday night I was in Atlanta seeing Metallica, Greta Van Fleet, and Cage the Elephant
at the Benz Dome.
Yeah. So I had all the games recorded. So on Sunday when I came back, I started watching some of the Panthers. And I watched the Heat, you know what I mean? And I watched a little bit of the Canes and Georgia Tech. But I wanted to catch up a little bit with some of the stuff that I missed on Saturday. And the Panthers were the first thing that I watched. God, it's awesome when you have it recorded because you can speed through a whole bunch of things and you watch everything so quickly, man. When you get through all the breaks and commercials and half times and all that, you watch the game really fast. When you're able to do that. But that was just sweet to watch, man. I was checking it on my phone while I was at the concert. I was looking at the Heat. I was looking at the Panthers. I'm like, holy crap, man. Thank the Lord for our winter teams, right? I mean, the Panthers and the Heat are saving this town right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun few months the way that it's building up right now because the Panthers, they obviously look like they're for real. And it's just going to be the questions that have become, what can it lead to when we get to the playoff time? Are they going to get out of the first round? Are they going to truly contend for a cup? And with the Heat, it's the same thing. I know we're here to talk Panthers, but with the Heat, they look so solid on both ends of the court. That's what really gets me excited is how excited they are, not only to have that camaraderie and that chemistry on the offensive end, but when you see the effort that guys are putting in on the D end and the forcing turnovers and they're getting in passing lanes and it's just so much fun to watch. I love it. And when you got a guy like Kyle Lowry who just steps in, totally fits with the culture, and I don't remember who it was that asked him about it after a game last week. And he's like, oh, what do you think of this Heat culture? And he's like, man, this is fun. Not many guys come into here to South Florida to play basketball, go to that workshop that they have at the not the AAA, the FTX now. And we've seen players come into Miami and really struggle with the work ethic that you have to adopt to be a Heat player. And a guy like Kyle Lowry, who's an elite player, let's not argue. He's an elite player in this NBA. And he's like, oh, this is so much fun. I love all this work.
Well, because he was built for it, because that's what he's, I kind of see that myself personally at times, like in radio, when I work with people and I see they're lazy and I go, okay, well, then I know you're not going to last very long in this business. That's kind of the way it is. You can't go to the Heat and be lazy, dude. No,
not at all.
You got to be able to have a work. You got to have a standard there. And if you don't hold it, God, I'm about to sneeze. I'm trying to hold it. It's one of those deals. And I think if you're used to, the blue collar, put in hard work every day, you're never going to have a problem with the Miami Heat. But if you came here to go hang out and enjoy South Beach, and then you're going to play basketball, oh, you're screwed. You're so screwed, bro.
No, and it goes back to like what was built. Pat Riley started it. He brings up Eric Spoelstra in his image around the same time as when Udonis and Dwayne Wade were kind of adopting it behind the scenes as well. And it's just carried over 2 decades now. And it's still the norm. It's still the way it's got to be, which it's awesome to see. You don't see teams that have that kind of
culture,
consistency and culture year in and year out. You think in the NBA, like the Spurs under Pop, like they had it for a long time. It's rare, and so to have it down here,
the team that's coming on Thursday to take on the Dolphins, the Ravens, they've had that culture in place for a while now.
Harbaugh's done a really good job there. No doubt. There's a handful of teams in every sport you can pick out that have done it.
All right, so walk me through this. By the way, follow David on Twitter at David Dwork, and please, please, please subscribe to his podcast, Chirping the Cats podcast, okay? So you can keep up with the Panthers. So Andrew Brunette, now we found out that it's Brunette, not Brunetti. So Andrew Brunette is the interim head coach. The way I understood it, the way they kind of phrased it, the way Nick phrased it is, hey, we're going to take our time. We're going to slow walk this thing. And you kind of get the feeling that we all thought that Tua was getting an audition, but you could tell that the front office and the coaching staff don't believe in him. So they're dying to get rid of his ass. So there's no audition there. But here it really looks like there's a real audition going on. So, and they're not missing a beat. And if this continues, why would you make a change? If they respond to this man, if things are in place, I don't know why I would want to disrupt anything that's going on. Are we reading it right or are we reading it wrong?
No, you're reading it right. I mean, look, it's been a super small sample size, obviously,
right,
but big picture, absolutely. That's why they went with Brunette. And they've said it in the time since that they wanted to keep things as the same as possible. They wanted to run the same systems. They wanted to practice the same way. They wanted everything. They didn't want to, like, the players all had a meeting after what happened with Q. And they basically decided, let's keep things as similar as possible. Like, we're rolling right now. We've been building towards this for 3 years, and Brunette has been there the entire time. He's been there the last 3 years, just like Q was there, just like assistant coach Derek McKenzie has been there, just like a lot of these players have been there. And now they're finally, like, they've reached this point where they've never looked this good. And they've, you know, you've got guys like Barkov and Huberdeau and Ekblad that are all entering their prime years right now. So it's not only building towards something now, but something that could be sustainable for several years in the future. Why would you bring in a coach that would mess with anything? Why would you change the way you practice, change the way you run drills, change the way that you're supposed to play on the ice? Why? You're the best team in the NHL right now. So yeah, at least in the short term, it's a perfect fit. The players really like Brunette. He's had a great relationship with Sasha Barkov. And I mean, as you can see, the team hasn't skipped a beat despite going, you know, playing back-to-back games on the road, playing back-to-back games at home against teams that combined had one regulation loss between Washington and Carolina, and coasting, you know, not obviously not coasting like they're trying hard, but continuing to succeed. So yeah, if this season continues on this path, I think you give Brunette a long, hard look in the offseason to take off that interim label. Why wouldn't you? This is how young coaches get established in this league. And, you know, to Brunette, he's lucky. He goes into a situation, usually when you replace a coach, it's because they're fired, because they did something bad.
Yeah.
You know, that had what happened with the coach leaving had nothing to do with the team on the ice this season.
No.
So it's really a great situation for Brunette. And yeah, it could end up being a big career thing for him, because why wouldn't he continue on this path? Why wouldn't they keep him?
Who's the other coach they added to the staff since Brunette gets elevated?
Nobody. They haven't had any.
Really?
The coaching staff has been, you got Ulf Samuelsson and Rutu. I'm blanking on his first name right now. That are the assistant coaches. They were both added recently. And Derek McKenzie has been there for the last 3 years. He was brought on when Brunette was brought on. And then Rob Tallis has been the goalie coach kind of like forever. Tuomo Rutu. Just blanked on it right there. But yeah, I mean, they haven't really needed to add anybody. They had a really solid coaching staff. And I think the responsibilities kind of stay the same. Brunette was already running the power play. He was already running a lot of drills in practice. So I really think the only difference is one guy is not there anymore. One voice is not there anymore. But I think, you know, the train rolls on, and we're seeing that evidence on the ice.
Speaking of coaching, you happy with the special teams?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, I mean, you know, the power play looked great against Carolina the other night. The penalty kill has looked great all season. When you've got like Jonathan Huberdeau's and Anthony Duclair's and Eetu Luosterainen's, and you've got Sam Bennett was great on the penalty kill. I mean,
it's the most consistent we've seen of the special teams so far, right? Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you put that much talent together, I mean, what really excites, because the power play, I feel like there's so much firepower between the two units that it was gonna come around. You want to build that chemistry. You look at how fast, like there was one goal the other night. I think it was the Patrick Hornquist goal where all 5 guys on the ice touched the puck for like a split second. It was like boom, 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 goal. And that's what you're building towards. The quick movement.
Possession, they dominated possession the other night in that overtime. That was a beautiful overtime with the score, with the goal, how it all set up. That was awesome, dude. The way they dominated that overtime and how they were able to maintain possession, switch guys on and off the ice, and then work their way to the goal. That was a masterpiece of a performance in that overtime, dude.
Yeah, that was a masterclass in how to play 3-on-3 overtime, because they had the only time they didn't have the puck was for about 2 seconds when somebody on Washington got it in the corner, and then all Barkov did, which you don't usually do in 3-on-3, by the way, is attack the guy, steal the puck, keep the play going. Yeah, masterclass. Unbelievable what they did in that overtime.
It was awesome, dude. That overtime the other night, just like, I was like, holy crap, dude, this team's badass, bro, to do what they did the other night, and the way they've played all year. It's just been absolutely fantastic. So it's nice to hear that Brunette's going to have a chance at all of this, because you make a great point. You bring somebody in, even if you tell them, hey, try to keep everything the same, they're still going to want to add something that they like to do over. And as time goes on, they'll change things up. You know what I mean? And even when adversity hits, it's funny, but athletes love consistency. And once you become inconsistent, it kind of throws them off, because they're so routine driven. And I don't care what sport you cover, dude. It's just one of those of us that have been in locker rooms and dealt with players and coaches, they truly believe in routines, and they really like to stay in what they have timed out every day, every week, because it's what, once you take them off that and you get them off kilter, it kind of throws them off sometimes. Some guys can adjust and some guys don't, but if you bring somebody new in, you know it, they're going to make some kind of changes.
Yeah, it's funny. Just like whatever sport you're watching, like if it's in hockey, go watch a pregame warm up. You're going to see the same guys in the same spots at the same time every single time. You cover a hockey locker room, a football locker room, a basketball locker room. You know the same guys are going to come in at the same points every day. They're going to speak at the same. Like, it's all routine oriented. And there's a few guys that can handle the chaos and that are cool with working with different things. But for the majority, it absolutely, it's, you get there the same time every day. You go work out at the same time. You get your treatments. You get your food. You do your practice. That's kind of how you maintain, because like it's something a lot of people, I don't think, give these athletes credit for, is that they have to go out, whatever sport it is, whether it's football for 5 months, whether it's hockey and basketball for 8 months at a time, you're expected to perform at the highest level in the world every single day. That is hard as bleep. So it makes perfect sense that these guys are going to live their lives as similarly in a routine as possible, so they can continue to perform like that day after day. It's hard. So yeah, I mean, just to your point, it makes perfect sense that's why they do it, and that's why they kept Brunette there, and that's why the Panthers continue to look as good as they have all year.
All right, so now I can ask you these kind of questions without getting you in trouble or making you feel uncomfortable. The Florida Panthers, he's wondering, what the hell is he doing?
I'm so scared right now.
Yeah, Panthers are favored by 1.5 on the Hard Rock Sportsbook app,
which I use, by the way. I am now using.
Me too. I'm using it every day, a lot.
Yeah.
Anyways, the Panthers are favored by 1.5. The over and under is 5.5 goals. The Panthers are minus 115, and it just changed. They went to minus 120, and now the Rangers are plus 100. Which one do you like?
You said the over under is 5.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tempting. I mean, obviously the Panthers have been scoring like 4 goals every game. Yeah. So that's kind of like a good one there. The Rangers are a little bit
give up 2? Will they give up 2 is the question. Well, the Panthers
the Rangers are at home. You always say, the first game at home after a long road trip, you never quite know what to expect. But I mean, the Panthers and the over have been really friendly with me this season, for lack of a better term. So I like the over. Spreads are really tricky in hockey because the empty net often comes into play, which can really mess things up. So I try to stay away from that unless it's like a Tampa against Ottawa or some matchup like that. And the Rangers also, they're starting
complete imbalance you need, right?
Yeah. And the Rangers are starting Igor Shesterkin tonight, he's an excellent, excellent young goaltender. So you never really know what to expect with the spreads, but I like the over under for the Panthers. I think minus 120 is actually not too shabby considering, I guess they're giving the Rangers some credit being at home. But I mean, look, right now the Panthers are the number 1 team in the league. So I think out of those, I would go with the over under.
Well, I just took the over 5.5. So
yeah, I like the over.
The over sounds good. The 1.5, I'm with you. If it's half a goal, then I'm tempted but they're rare, by the way, the lines like that, because Vegas knows the same thing about overtime, how it just, there's always a freebie goal that just changes everything in the spread, man, which is really rough. Folks, make sure you subscribe to Chirping the Cats podcast. Listen to my man David Dwork. You drop a new edition, twice a week? Is it? How many times?
There's no set schedule. It's just kind of like whenever,
on average.
I've got some. But I think there was 2 last week. There was one where we kind of broke down the whole Q situation. I spoke to a national writer, David Pagnotta, and we talked about it and got into the nitty gritty a little bit. And then late last week, I posted a quick one-on-one that I had with Sam Reinhart, and we sat down after practice one day, and I kind of asked him for some tidbits on the different guys in the locker room, like funniest guy and who chirps the most. So some fun stuff on the pod last week for sure.
Any injuries we got to be worried about tonight?
Well, Sergei Bobrovsky stated this morning he might be the backup tonight, but a 2-space night tonight. Yeah. But I mean, I think that just shows that whatever his upper body injury is, isn't anything too serious, as he might be out there tonight as a backup. And then Sasha Barkov is a game time decision for tonight's game. He skated this morning, as did Sam Bennett, as did Joe Thornton. The latter two are considered day to day. But I mean, it sounds like everybody is relatively close. The injured guys, it doesn't sound like there's anybody long-term aside from like a Noah Chari, and we're not really sure what the deal has been with Marcus Nudavara this season. But again, as we said early on in the interview, it's all about the depth. And, look at what they did against Carolina. You're missing your top 2 centers, you're missing your starting goaltender, and you go out there and you really mollywop them for a little while. So it was pretty sweet to see. But hopefully, if Barkov doesn't play tonight, I would expect to see him and Bennett and probably Thornton as well at some point on this road trip.
There you go. Follow him on Twitter at David Dwork, and catch him at Channel 10 or Chirping the Cats podcast. David, as always, thank you, my brother. Appreciate you. Enjoy the Okie tonight.
I will, man. Be well.
There you go. The great David Dwork, man. Good stuff there, as always.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.